No, I'm doing it.
Hey, guys.
I think there was a game tonight.
Call this meeting to order. Welcome here, everyone. And at this time, I'd like to give the opening to Councillor Jake Hiebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the interest of our citizens, on October 26, 2022 was election day, and the city of Steinbach saw their new council as their old council. Our mayor, Earl Funk, was acclaimed. The election included the 6 incumbent councillors and 1 person from the community. When the light dust settled, the 6 incumbent councillors were re-elected. I acknowledge Mr. Sean Liska and his contribution to democracy, the right of Canadian citizens to seek public office, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal. On November 1st, the new council had their first council meeting. Prior to the meeting, we were involved in an inaugural meeting. This was a meeting where the mayor and councils were sworn in. I noted that there were several people in the gallery observing the procedure. I was somewhat taken aback by the comments of people impressed with the procedure. People were not aware that councils followed certain protocols. For me, this is rather a solemn occasion where I committed to uphold the laws that represent the best interest of our citizens. Upon completion of the oath, our city manager made his voluntary declaration. This past week, Council had a 3-hour orientation session where our roles and responsibilities were reviewed. This upcoming weekend, Council will meet for a day and a half for our fall study session to determine spending priorities for the city. So what directs Council or governs Council to do their work as outlined? Here's a simplistic look. Council, as well as our CEO and department heads, must be cognizant and in compliance with federal legislation, provincial legislation, bylaws, policies, and regulations. In our order for Council to pass any variance, firstly, there must be a quorum present in Council meeting. As you'll see here, we have 7 people here, but in order for us to have a Council where we can pass any bylaws or laws, we have to have at least 4 people present. To the citizens of the city, your council has only 1 employee, and that employee is our city manager. In turn, Mr. Workentine is responsible for hiring and appointing department heads who in turn hire and supervise employees that are responsible and accountable to the department heads. Then what does council do, or what is council responsible for? Council develops and evaluates policies and programs of the municipality. Council carries out the powers, duties, and functions expressly given to the Council under this or any other act, ensuring that necessary practices and procedures are in place to effectively implement Council decisions. Council approves and monitors the city's mission and vision statement on a periodic basis. Council maintains the city's financial integrity. What's most important to me is Council represents the residents of this city. How and when does Council make a decision? Here's a quick overview. Prior to Council meetings, each of us get a booklet and with an agenda outlining the issues to be discussed. Councillors review all the documentation prior to the meeting. In most cases, councillors may attend the property in question in order to be better informed. If a public hearing is required, councillors listen to the concerns of those presenting, and then when all the evidence is entered, when all the facts are gathered, a decision is based on all the relevant information presented. Council ensures that legislation, policy, bylaws, etc. have been considered. Council may solicit the advice of city employees, CEO, ensuring decisions are based on facts and more information is gathered. Council must also be cognizant of any bias, perception of bias, natural justice, duty to act fairly, and to do due diligence. That means that Council may have to table an item to another meeting in order to gather all the relevant information before making a final decision. Sometimes it's not enough to say that the presenter did not present certain concerns, making it appropriate to deny any variance, etc. When all relevant information has been gathered, each councillor makes an independent decision. On a bit of a rabbit trail, I received a call this week from the Reeve of Treeherne, who had watched our November 1st council online. The Reeve, on three or four occasions, mentioned his positive impression of Mayor Funk leading this council, and then the harmony that was displayed by council. He then emulated your leadership, Mr. Mayor, in his first council meeting, and he experienced the success that he was not aware that he had had in previous councils. The Reeves would like to meet you, Mr. Mayor, meet you at AMM next week. As the third largest city in Manitoba, Steinbach Council is not only being watched by our citizens, but also by the outside. Again, I speak to the citizens of our city. All city 6 councillors and our mayor represent you, the citizens of Steinbach. Earlier, I alluded that council has, we have 1 employee, the CEO. The 1,800 citizens of Steinbach have 7 employees, the people that you elected. Part of the oath I read earlier, I didn't read it, but part of the oath that we took was that I will act faithfully in the office of councillor without fear, favor, or affection, and will truly, faithfully, and impartially, and to the best of my knowledge and ability, execute the duties and the abilities to execute the duties and the responsibilities of that office. To this, I'd like to add, as we represent you and the interests of this great city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hiebert. Okay, Council, we have the agenda in front of us, looking for a motion to adopt. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have the minutes of November 1st, 2022, the inaugural meeting on page 1. We've all had a chance to review. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Swagstra. Any comments?
No comments.
Call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We have the minutes of November 1, the 2022, the regular council meeting, starting on page 4. Council, looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Stevens, second by Councillor Hiebert.
Nothing.
Comments? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Council is just a little bit after 7:35, so we will now move to the public hearing. This is 7A, the Conditional Use CU-2022-04. This is referring to number 9 and number 10 of 110 Industrial Road. Council, it starts on page 10 of your package. At this time, I will close the public hearing, or the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workneen, could you please introduce this file?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of council, conditional use application file CU-2022-04, respecting units 9 and 10 at 110 Industrial Road in Steinbach. The owner of the subject property is 101-34593 Manitoba Ltd. The applicant for the conditional use is Rock Eastman Inc. Purpose of the conditional use application is to allow the operation of a retail sales business in units 9 and 10 on the subject property. Under City of Steinbach zoning bylaw 2100, all retail sales are a conditional use within the M1 light industrial zone. Notices as required under the Planning Act have been issued. There is no written correspondence on the file. With respect to the conditional use application, this property is zoned M1 light industrial. Having said that, the general area surrounding the subject property is also a mix of both light industrial and heavy industrial uses. If the conditional use application is approved by council, although the requested approval is specific to units 9 and 10, there is no legal separation of these units from any other unit on the site, and approval would run with the land. Council has denied a previous application by the owner earlier this fall under file CU-2022-02, requesting approval, conditional use approval of to permit retail sales on this site. There is precedent for council's consideration that I have listed in the file, and recommendation from administration is that council deny the application.
Thank you, Mr. Workteen. Is the applicant here today? Do you wish to say, you can take the podium, state your name, address, and then continue.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Stefan Holman, 36161 Lone Boulevard, Steinbach. Yes, as you had heard, we had a previous application in that was kind of requesting for the entirety of the site. We had come back to revise just specifically for unit 9 and 10. So this, if this conditional use is granted, we're okay with specifically having Rock Eastman being limited to the use. They intend to have a few book sales a couple times a year, and I believe that's about 3 or 4 times a year. Moni is here as well. I'm not sure if she wants to speak. She's from Rock Eastman. So overall, it's a warehouse. That's the use of the facility. That's kind of, they have the shelving in there and all that stuff. Kind of like we've seen in the past in the mall, setups with displaying books. That's kind of the intent of occasional fundraiser events. So again, we're not looking for a full retail authorization, but just a very, very limited consideration simply for Rock Eastman. If there's any other way that council feels that it is necessary to put any type of limitations to this conditional use, we're definitely ears and we're wanting to work with council to make this happen for Rock Eastman. Do you want to say something? Okay. Oh, or unless there's any other questions specifically for me myself.
Well, council, are there any questions of the Councillor Hiebert or Councillor Siemens? Sorry.
Thank you for that information. The one issue here that needs to be addressed, and that's holding this back, is that all the units aren't legally separated. So we can't separate 9 and 10 from the whole area. It has to be, because you haven't separated each one by legal separation, we can't say it's just 9 or 10. Now we have to take somebody's word for it. And so if we allow this, then it wouldn't matter which unit it is. So that's the problem, as the conditional use goes on the land, not on the individual properties. If these were requested on a legal basis, on a separate, then that would look a lot different in this case. So at least that's my understanding. Do I have that correct? Through administration, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes. So even though you're requesting only 9 and 10, really it's for all of the units because of the issue. So council's in a dilemma. I'm in a dilemma here because we approve this now on a conditional basis for it. That's fine, but it's not 9 and 10. It's everything. And so that's the because there's a legal requirement here for us. So how do you have not separated all these condos legally? Are you planning to do so?
Not at this time. From my understanding, I guess I wasn't aware of this dilemma, but what I was previously aware of is that the individual tenants, when they do intend to, have a specific use, they go through an occupancy permit application. And so my impression was that occupancy goes directly with that unit, because everyone is using it. You could have a car repair shop, next guy's using it for different reasons. So even given the fact that those type of things were separated, I was under the impression that this would be no problem here in this case as well, but maybe I'm...
Okay. Anything further of council?
I have a question for administration.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mr. Workington, can you state clearly, are there any conditions that can be put on this in terms of either limiting it to those units or limiting to specifically Rock Eastman? Can you state clearly, are there any conditions that council is actually able to put on, or is this simply a matter of it's with the land, it's a conditional use? We just want that on the record.
Very well. There was a previous application for a conditional use that was near to this particular property where council did approve a conditional use for retail sales. It was subject to what's called a major occupancy agreement. The conditions or the situation where the particular conditional use approval runs with the land, because at that time that property too was also not subject to any legal separation from one unit to the other. At least on a legal basis, no, that stays the same, or that statement stays the same in that there is no legal separation from one unit to the other. The best or the strongest condition that could be imposed would be subject to any particular conditions that council may want to put on any approval should it wish to approve the application. One could be, for example, the major occupancy agreement, or it could be subject to any other condition that council may choose to add to the property. For example, if the conditional use was limited to very specifically the use that's being proposed by the particular tenant.
So just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, so are you saying then that we could put a condition in place, for example, stating that it would be approved subject to exactly what's being proposed here and nothing more, and that would actually be binding?
It would be binding insofar as the entire property is owned as one unit. So there is no legal separation, at least from a land titles perspective.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
To administration through you. The presenter may note that, you know, the sales would happen only about 4 times a year. Is that considered retail just because it's only 4 times a year?
Yes.
So there's no other category it could fill, you know, be, I guess, presented in? Because it's not really, not even close to primary retail. My understanding is primarily storage. So to just have, you know, a few days a year.
Correct. The city's zoning bylaw doesn't designate how many times or how many actual retail transactions occur. It only identifies is a particular use and is that particular use considered retail sales. And based on the definitions and interpretation of the city zoning bylaw, having used book sales from time to time, even if they are not happening frequently, are still considered retail sales.
Anything further, council? Go ahead, Councillor Sway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Mr. Workington, is there any way to approve this subject to it being 4 times a year for a book sale? Can it get that specific? Or is that just, I know that's far more specific than we usually go, but you know this doesn't really fit the category here very well. But we don't want to, we get the problem with approving retail, because then the whole area can become fully retail, and that's problematic.
I won't be able to answer that question directly, but I am quite certain that city staff have a host of other responsibilities and activities than to count how many times retail sales occur on a particular site.
Right.
There's over 500 business properties located in Steinbach that might be a tall order for our existing staff levels.
Okay. I have a question for administration, just a clarification. Can one of the restrictions we put on that it is only for the tenant at this time, and then when that tenant moves up, this is void? Can that
That
be
is a
one of the-
possible condition that council could impose, yes.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Penner, and then Councillor.
Okay, so just to clarify through you, if the condition says that, or like a condition is once Rock moves out, the conditional use is void, is that something we can do? I just want to be like very clear.
Yes,
Before we would-
in the information package that is before council, if council is prepared to consider that particular condition in addition to the condition of the execution of a major occupancy agreement, or if there's any other conditions that council wishes to impose, that would be as close to limitation as without having a legal separation of the property that I would foresee possible.
Okay, and then just if they did 0 retail sales out of there and just used it as storage, would they be here at all right now, or they can be
No.
using it for that purpose?
Correct.
I had the same question, sir.
Okay. Anything further, council? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? I see none, but I'll ask again. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file?
As I was reading through the zoning bylaw, and I think I brought it up, it's my understanding that an auction room is allowed, which would be just a change of transaction, whether it's sold off the shelf or via auction. It is my understanding that if the books get auctioned off, we wouldn't be here today. So we're navigating this fine gray area, and again, we're open to.
Question, Councillor Penner?
Thank you. So how do we know, let's say now you have 4 book sales a year, it's going really well, that's what you came here, that was your intent, but it's going really well. Well, why don't we start doing it a little more often, or doing it a little more often? It's, in spite of what we've heard, it's a real challenge, because even though the intention is sincere right now, that can easily evolve if you see opportunity to make more money. So how do we know that that would not happen?
I think that question is best answered by Moni from Rock Eastman. Yeah, they rely on volunteers. My estimates, they're not going to be there 24/7, but I'll let her answer.
Hi, Moni Lowen with Executive Director with Rock Eastman. We can't handle more than 4 times a year. This is not our primary mission. Our primary mission is supporting families and kids in recreation pursuits. We could barely do twice a year. So I completely understand that this is, I would put that in writing if that helped. We will not do more than 4 times a year. We can't handle it.
I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here with comments, questions, or objections to this file? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Sveigstra?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will make a motion to approve, subject to a major occupancy agreement and subject to that this is limited to just Rock Eastman, as we discussed.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Siemens. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The choice before us is difficult and not difficult. What is not difficult is we get what Rock Eastman is trying to do. They want to have the occasional book sale there. It's a charity. They want to support families. I think everyone around here, none of us have a problem with the occasional, couple times a year, people come and buy some books there. I mean, I don't think that's going to have a major impact on the area. The problem we're wrestling with, of course, is because this is being designated as a retail, and I do not like putting retail in the industrial park. I've voted against some previous retail locating there. In this case here, based on the answers from our city manager, that we can not only have the occupancy agreement, but limit it specifically to Rock Eastman. And I do believe Moni when she says that this is the maximum number of times we're going to do it. And so I just don't see a scenario where they're going to have book sales every month. And if we actually are able to tie this just to Rock Eastman, then if someone else buys the property and Rock Eastman isn't there, the retail doesn't continue, because this is specifically limited to that. That's the answer that our city manager gave. I'm relying on that as the way in which we can assure this. This is not ideal. It would be better if we had a special Rock Eastman category or charity category or something, but we don't. And we can't amend the zoning bylaw on the fly right here. And the reality is that hard cases make for bad law. And so we don't make laws around difficult cases. We have general principles and then we try to apply those. So it's a difficult one as far as I don't like the idea of this being designated as retail, but with these conditions, the only thing that's going to happen there is the occasional book sale, and I can live with that.
Thank you. Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I seconded the motion so I could approve, so that we could attempt to approve it, so I'll vote in favor definitely. Again, the issue here is the legal requirement that these aren't individually legally zoned, so we can't put it to just 9 and 10, it's to all of them. So that is, I agree with Councillor Swykstra that we don't want retail in industrial, and we want to keep retail where it belongs, and this is one of those gray areas for us. So want to warn also the applicant here that we aren't going to approve more retail in that area because we don't want retail there. So that needs to be understood. I think I also believe what Rock Eastman is trying to do in our community and for our community, and the book sale where they've been in many different places, they want a home. So I understand that as well, and so I think this fits. I agree with the terms that there's only 4 times per year. That is only for Rock, so that nobody else can entertain putting a retail space in there, and it's only for units 9 and 10. And I believe that's not part of the motion. Can we make that as a friendly amendment, that it's only units 9 and 10?
I have no objection if that actually has any weight. That would be up to us, but
That would be aligned with the public notice, the way that that document was worded.
then absolutely put that in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further, Council? Councillor Penner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're really getting, we're splitting hairs here on this one. It's very close. I'm really struggling on this one, and the reason I'm struggling is I feel like change can happen, and the way that the motion is put forward at this point in time, I don't feel like we're quite specific enough, because at this point in time, we're just giving a carte blanche that it's going to be able to be zoned retail, and change can happen. Change can happen with terms of within the organization. Change can happen with growth, with more volunteer base. I have no doubts that Rock is going to continue to grow and continue to be able to impact the community more and more and more. And with that is where I'm conflicted of, they may look at not doing book sales anymore. This might all of a sudden become a different type of retail space. And I trust Moni in her word, but again, change can happen. And so putting this to straight retail, unless there's a little bit more in the form of a friendly amendment, and I would allow that to be up to the person that moved it to decide what would be best. I can't agree with the motion as it sits forward right now, because too much can change with how it's worded at this point in time.
Thank you. Anything further, Council?
Can I ask another question through administration? Okay. I just wanted to ask you, parking in these industrial units, required parking in an industrial unit versus a retail unit, are the amounts required different? What would be, would the parking be adequate? Because we're quite particular about that, so I just wanted to.
Generally, basic warehouse uses, my understanding is don't require any parking, any official parking stalls. Retail uses would require 1 parking stall for every 500 square feet.
So is there, if this was retail, is there enough parking designated to each spot?
That would remain to be seen. I know there was a site sketch that was available. However, that would be one of the components of the proposed major occupancy agreement that would address parking for the site.
I do have a question for the applicant. Can you shed any light on the amount of parking that's there at this time?
Yes, I believe we have close to 100 stalls. It's usually underutilized, and right in front of Rock Eastman units, there's 6 stalls, like right in front of their space. So that would meet that requirement, I believe, of 1 per 500. If you look at units 9 to 10, yeah, there's 3 stalls right in front of those units.
Okay, you say 100 stalls, but they're in front of other units that will be using that parking.
Like was mentioned, there's nothing really needed to be tied to warehouse spacing. So we have generally speaking, for any visitors, like more than enough stalls available generally. However, there's 6 stalls directly in front of Rock Eastman units that can be assigned to them, which would fulfill that requirement of 1 to 500 square feet.
That fills the requirement of 1 to 500.
That's my understanding.
How big are these units?
The stalls?
Yeah.
I want to say they're
No,
9.
the units, 9 and 10.
They're about 1,200 square feet each.
Okay.
So just under 1,200 square feet each.
So then according, Mr. Warrington, now I have a question for you. So according to 12, it'd be 2,400 square feet with 6 parking spots, that would fall under that parking requirement.
That would appear to comply, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Anything further of council? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As council notes, I have voted previously against retail in the light industrial area. This owner applied for a very similar conditional use around a month ago. The only difference was that the application was for 2 units. Although he's again applying for 2 units, it could be used on more, except with the special caveat that we're putting on this motion. Is the bar that we're setting based on the number of units, or is the bar set that this is M1 light industrial? I asked the question, when this area was zoned light industrial, what was the intent at that time? Maybe it's time to rezone this area to something that includes retail. When I see instead that people are leaving commercial areas for the cheaper warehouse in district. Retail is retail, light industrial is light industrial. If we pass this, then maybe we should pass all future ones and rezone this area to include this application. If we don't, what are we looking at? Like, what do we want this area to be? It's zoned light industrial. Do we want it mixed retail? Do we want it half and half? But until such a time as we rezone it, I still take the stand that this is light industrial, and I am going with that.
Thank you. Ask one more time, is there anything further of council? Go ahead.
Closing.
Yeah, go, anything closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things to consider before we vote. If Rock Eastman was simply using this to store their books, that would be fine under M1 Industrial. That would be totally okay. So the question I want to ask all of us here is, would we be okay knowing that 4 times a year people came and bought some of those books, 4 times a year? As the city manager had mentioned, our staff aren't exactly driving around looking for infractions and all that. Frankly, I think if they just set up their warehouse and people just 4 times a year came and bought a book, I don't think any of us would even notice. That's how minor this impact is. Again, I don't like retail in the industrial park, obviously, but they're using it, it's primarily storage. Like they're storing their books, and then a maximum of 4 times a year, people will come and buy those books. In terms of impact, this is as minor as it gets compared to anything else we've ever improved for an industrial park. It's more minor than a church. It's more minor than the local Manners thrift store, Urban Life, or any of the other things, or skirts for that matter, any of those things. So we've put conditions here. The conditions are pretty strict. The conditions are you have a major occupancy agreement, which is going to address making sure there's enough parking available and all that sort of thing. So we've put in the motion that it's units 9 and 10. And yes, I get the point that legally speaking, in theory, are we worried that Rock Eastman is just going to take over the whole thing? It's going to be this big multi-event center of just Rock Eastman. I don't think so. I don't think that's likely. And then also, we are also putting the condition on this is limited just to Rock Eastman. So the moment Rock Eastman isn't there, there's no retail that's allowed there. This is not perfect, but there's no zoning category this fits under. And I do want to have a common sense approach here. I don't like, changing, approving this conditional use, but I also don't like saying no when it's kind of obvious that the impact really is minor. People are going to come 4 times a year and buy a book that happens to be stored there. I can live with that. I think we should pass the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sextra. Well, council, this is an easy one, but it's a difficult one, given the situation. I do believe, like Rock Eastman's a great organization. They do a lot for underprivileged kids that can get into sports, families that need help getting their children into sports, and they've done a lot of great work in our community. And they've had many book sales over the years. As Moni said, they could only support with volunteers and just the amount of workload it is, they could only support up to 4 book sales a year. I agree, this is not, there's no real zoning category in our city for something like this, the occasional sale. And I'm comfortable with the motion and that there's enough restriction in there that when Rock Eastman moves out, that nullifies any retail that's allowed there. So this will only be for the occasional bookstore, and the rest of the time, they'll be storing books, I don't know, possibly some sporting equipment and that kind of stuff, so that they're ready when kids are able to get into the sport they're looking for. So for that reason, I will support the motion. I think it's not perfect, it's not great, but I think it's a compromise that can work for the time that Rock Eastman is there. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, council, we will move to administration. 10A, accounts payable. It's in the back of the book. We've all had a chance to review, looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Stevens. Any comments?
No comments.
Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have the financial statements ending October 31st, 2022. That's also in the back of the book. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Penner.
No comments.
Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We've got the building permits for October 2022. It's on page 20. Looking for a motion to approve. Councillor Swagstra, second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The permits continue to be strong, and this current month, just over 4 million in residential, nearly 3 million in commercial, industrial, and such. So total of 7.3 million this month, 73 million for this year. It's good that we continue to have a balanced approach to development, significant residential and significant commercial happening as well. So this is good to see.
Thank you. Anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I like to showcase this because I like talking about the families that come to our city. Our city is built on families, and at 177 year-to-date total dwelling units added. That's a new family every other day, so let's make sure that we welcome them.
Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Yes, council, this is, it is another great month, and it is great to see so many families move in, so many dwelling units, like you say, 177. That's a great amount for the year to date. There'll be more coming. But one thing I'd like to highlight is that the commercial and industrial is almost, like for year to date, is almost exactly in half. It's just over 36 million. And the residential is just under 37 million. So that is a great mix. It shows that not only is our community growing with people, but it's also growing with business. And that's exciting to see. So call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We've got 10D business license.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Councillor Siemens, second by Councillor Hiebert. Any comments?
We need backhoes.
Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we've got number 10E. This is the Board of Revision. We're looking for a resolution to ratify the decisions by the Board of Revisions. Councillor.
So be it resolved.
Second by Councillor Swagstra. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are minor adjustments that are made with the Board of Revision that was appointed at its last meeting, and they have the knowledge of the files better than we do, so.
Thank you. Anything further?
I got nothing. He said it all.
I'd also like to thank the Board of Revision for the time and the work they spent on this. We've got a great team of men that do this, and they go through the files and they make sure that they're fair, and their recommendations have been fair. So I totally support this motion. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Council question period. Are there any questions of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to correspondence and petitions. We've got 12A, Epp Library, minutes of September 21st, 2020, and October 19th, 2022. It's on page 35. Council, how would you like to proceed? Take as information. Okay. We have the Epp Library grant funding request on page 39. Council, how would you like to proceed?
Information.
Take as information, okay. Steinbach Community Outreach, we've got grant funding requests there for, it starts on page 40. How would you like to proceed? Take it as information. Okay. And we've got the Steinbach and Area Animal Rescue. This is also a grant funding request. It's on page 54. Council, how would you like to proceed? Also take as information?
Correct.
Okay. And we've got 12E. This is a letter by MLA Kelvin Gertzen. It's referring to honorary street naming request. Starts on page 57. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everyone knows, we had passed an honorary street renaming policy earlier this year that allows the opportunity to redesignate or to add a name to a street on an honorary basis to recognize significant contributions by individuals. The mayor here, the request here is from Steinbach MLA Kelvin Gertzen and is in regards to former Steinbach MLA and former Penner Foods owner Jim Penner, and requesting a street renaming, or at least an honorary naming. And I think we should consider this request, and I would suggest perhaps along Park Road. But certainly his contributions are significant, both as an MLA and as a business owner, and so he also served in council in the past as well. So Mr. Jim Penner does seem exactly like the type of person that we would consider doing an honorary street renaming for. So I'm happy to make that a motion if we wish, or if we need, or by consensus, or however we should proceed.
Yes, do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hiebert? Okay. That sounds great. So you've already made your comments?
Yep.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Okay. Anything further of council? Anything in closing? Yes, council, I do feel that this is a great way to honor a a pioneer, actually, I guess, in the grocery business. As a young boy, I got hired for what the Penner Foods people called enemy foods. It was the economy foods. We were downtown here. And so I always know Mr. Penner as the competition, right? But you know what? He was a great man for a community, and he built the Clear Spring Village Mall, and that changed the dynamics of number 12 Highway. And it gave us and now in hindsight, you see we have pretty much a second Main Street now. And he did a lot for our community as far as being on council and also being MLA. And I think this is a great way to honor a great pioneer, I would say, in our community. He went far above and beyond, and, you know, like I said, he was always my competition, I felt, but still always a man I respected. Call for the question. All's in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we've got 12F. This is the Adult Teen Challenge of Central Canada Property Tax Reduction Request. Councillor, how would you like to proceed?
Take his information, I guess.
There's no other business. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hiebert, second by Councillor Hiebert. Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Our next regular council meeting is Tuesday, December 6th, 2020.